Hey guys, thanks for watching the Team House. I hope you enjoy watching the show as much as Dave and I enjoy doing these interviews every week. I want to thank everyone who supports the show, especially our patrons. Those of you who have been with us for a long time remember our old set where it was like a white cloth in the background and the audio and video and the internet connection was always terrible. But you guys stuck with us, and really it is because of you that we're here in this new set and that we've really been able to up our production. So I wanted to let all of you know who are not patrons that the best way to support the stream, to support the Team House, is to join our Patreon. There's a link right down below, and those of you who sign up and support the stream will get access to ad-free episodes, both the video and the audio, and occasional bonus content as well. So we'd really appreciate it if you guys consider supporting the Team House.
The Team House with your hosts, Jack Murphy and David Park.
Anyway, fast forward, right? So we're in Kyiv, and if you remember at the time, this was early March, and the Russians, no kidding, are on three sides of Kyiv. It's so hard to imagine now. It seems surreal. But in Kyiv itself, 20% of the population was left behind, and everyone was preparing to defend the city. And so, you read about, and it was true in the West media, that Zelensky said, everyone who wants an AK-47, come and draw one. If you're between the age of 1865, they're sort of handing out all these weapons to guys who never handled a weapon before, right? Ammo, grenades, I'm not kidding you, it was surreal. And then some of the military guys there in Kyiv, middle-ranking, most soft guys, there's 3 or 4 guys, said, okay, we got to train, even if it's 3 or 4 days, because the Russians are approaching, they're on a time, it was a very tight time schedule, but we got to give them some training, right? And that's where they reached out to me, and I brought in short order, like 2 or 3 other guys, former Marines, Mozart guys from the States. We had a handful of guys in Ukraine, foreigners volunteering to help. We had very little time to kind of vet them. We didn't really vet them to begin with. We were lucky we got some very good quality guys.
You vet the guys who were doing the training, or
Yeah,
the soldiers?
yeah.
That's a crapshoot, isn't it?
We had no time for leaky vetting of the dudes who were about to fight the Russians. So we broke them up into 120-man increments, 5 days training. We'd finish training, and they would jump in their cars and they'd drive to the front. I'm not exaggerating, Irpin and Bucha. And then, they would come back a few days later for refresher training. We'd pull them into classes to talk about what they'd learned in that time. And you got incredible stories from these guys, and there was no bravado. These were guys who'd been mostly students, and now they're like
Shell-shocked.
Yeah, and they're like, holy shit, yeah, you've got to get very close to the Russians. Remember the Vietnamese, you say, they like hold on, get in, hold close, and then
classic,
they can't.
classic guerrilla tactic,
Yeah,
like you're getting close.
And so the Ukrainians learn this too. You got to get in. Once you get in close with their infantry, they're shit. Mm-hmm. But if you're in range with their mortars or their artillery, they're really fucking good, and it's devastating. You just gotta you got to get in there. And there's one kid, he's like, yeah, I never worked out how to shoot the AK-47. It's very confusing to me. So my lieutenant goes, here's a bag of grenades. Just, you work it like that. You pull the pin and just throw the grenade. And he's like,
but stand over there when you do it.
He was like, and it was so awesome. These things are easy. I mean, I swear to God, these are real conversations. And he's like, I can be the grenade thrower forever. And we're like, no, well, dude, hopefully the Russians aren't always going to be that close.
Right, right. So did you finally get him sorted on the AK?
Yeah. A lot of these guys have carried weapons. Very few of them have fired them, and the weapons manipulation is horrific. And so, fast forward, that was Battle of Kyiv, and I'm not saying we had an influence on the Battle of Kyiv, but we did our best, and we probably saved lives, Ukrainian lives, and hopefully contributed to Russian deaths. But it was it's a short order process, and it was you couldn't make this shit up. I mean, we would go to a range because you have to. I suppose it's some kind of a Marine Corps ethos, right? Because I know Army basic. They don't shoot their weapons. Basic. Come on, man. Don't
Milburn,
don't get defensive.
You come all this way to
all
talk
right.
shit?
No. Anyway, I'm totally conflating things. When I'm talking about special operations components, the Marine special operations, MASOC is the only component that during their selection, you're rated on marksmanship. Okay, listen, we can give the Marines one thing here, right, David? That is a religious observance of marksmanship, right?
Oh, there are many rifles.
Yeah.
This is my rifle. There are many. And every, like, that's the Marine Corps. Every Marine is a rifleman, and you spend your entire boot camp snapping in.
Yeah.
And
But what comes with that is a genuine feeling,
right,
among the cooks, bakers, and candlestick makers that they are riflemen, because at least once a year they go and, infantrymen can disparage that, but bottom line is every Marine knows how to shoot. Right? So that's kind of the ethos, because along with that comes confidence and everything else. You know? So 5 days, what do? Well, they've got to be medically proficient, in the sense they've got to know how to bring themselves back as best they can, and their buddy back from the edge, and stabilize them long enough to get them to the CCP. They've got to know how to shoot, how to hit the target. If they don't have a weapon that's zeroed, they may as well not carry the fucking weapon. I mean, it's this is all stuff we know, but we're learning. They have to know how to move. But what's the biggest threat? 99% of their casualties come from Russian artillery. So we're teaching them how to provide overhead cover, how to dig a decent trench. Yes, this is perhaps passive stuff, but it keeps them alive.
Right.
And that is our biggest threat.
Right. What did that training look like? So if they all drew out AKs, everybody got an AK. Did they get the ammunition to go for trauma training? Did you have goat labs? Did you use
No. They had some ammo, very little. What we required was 120 rounds to train with. We got that always, at least 120 rounds. For medical training, no. At that time, they didn't. They were short on everything. They were buying their own equipment for IFACs. They had no, what we call, squad. Yeah, I mean, you're a medic.
Like a medic or a corpsman or whatever?
The squad medic trauma kit.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Okay.
They still are short on those, by the way. But they were very short. Back then, they had shitty, the tourniquets that they were issued were shitty. They were Chinese made, and the window broke every time and they didn't have enough of them, blah, 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 no medical training. I mean, it was a recipe for disaster is no other way of putting it. But they pulled it off, and they pulled it off in fairness, because they had just an indomitable determination that the Russians were not going to, capture the capital. They knew the terrain. They had a lot of things on their side, right? And in fairness, the bar was pretty low on the Russian side, although not all Russian soldiers are shite. There's a lot of the Ukrainian soldiers we work with tell a lot of stories about Russian infantrymen who they come across who are very good. They may, whether they're called special forces or what, but very good snipers. They're encountering guys who are have been captured, but very good at resisting interrogation. The Russians, the infantry is not their strong point. Russian army is derelict, yes, but Russian military capability is still pretty significant. That's one thing that a lot of the think tanks are losing in the mix. It's like, it's binary, right? Russians are awesome. They're really scary. Oh, shit, no, now they're really fucking unscary. But it's somewhere in between.
Right.
Yeah, the infantry man-to-man are generally not good, but their artillery is really fucking good. I mean, however you look at it.
How would so you get all these, kids and civilians. You have 3 days. When they 5 days.
Yeah,
when they go to the front, or when they go to meet the Russians, do they filter in? Do they get regular army elements to lead them? Are they just making it up as they go along? How did that work?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It gets back to the debate in the Second World War, right? Between how casualties should be fed back into, or casualty replacements fed back into the front line, and the Germans did it very well. I'm getting to a point here. So the Germans pulled back units and replenished those units with a cadre of the veterans, and they bring in, new guys as a cohort.
Yeah.
But they would learn from the veterans, and then they would go back as a unit. Whereas the Brits and the Americans, the Americans called the Repel-Depel, right? So they would feed onesies and twosies. A platoon would lose 2 or 3 guys, and 2 or 3 days later, they'd get the 2 or 3 guy replacements. But they were FNGs, right? There was no sense, unless those guys survived beyond a certain point, there was no sense of loyalty towards them within the unit. Whereas if you do replacement, if you do unit replacement, then you tell the cadre of guys, survivors, this is your responsibility. The unit depends or dies based on your actions, and they take it upon themselves. So that is what the Ukrainians are doing. And it is proving very effective. So you see units that are taking 70, 80% casualties, and that's no exaggeration, being pulled back, being replenished by new recruits. We'll take them through training, and then they go back to the front. And they do remarkably well, morale-wise, and the cohesion, the way they look after each other. Don't get me wrong, the Ukrainian military has a lot of problems. Mm-hmm. Their officer class, never really embraced the Western way of doing things. And again, Think Tank Land loved this image of the Ukrainians adopting mission tactics. Oh my God, the Green Berets taught them the shit the last 16 months.
There's women fighting on the front lines.
They're like the resistance. Honestly, if you talk to 10th group guys, they're like, yeah, that's all bullshit. And I can tell you it's bullshit. What is not bullshit is the courage and the stories of these groups of individuals who fought the Russians and were experimenting with anti-tank guided missiles and turned out to be remarkably lucky, and in the Russian columns were halted. But the story is not about American mentorship and preparation. It's the opposite of that.
That's an interesting point of view.
Yeah. It's about the fact that they were citizen army, and interestingly enough, the mainstream Ukrainian army still shackled by its Soviet origins.
Interesting.
Kills mission command, kills small unit initiative.
Yeah.
But the fact that these guys hadn't been subjected to that yet.
Yeah.
They were civilians,
Yeah.
and they've been brought up with the Western Europe approach, and Ukrainians are remarkably tech savvy, and they have this, every nationality has kind of general characteristics. Ukrainians have this, at times it's almost an annoying, what's the word? Insubordination, right? It's like, no, I can do this better, blah, 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 fuck you. So it can work both ways. You get Ukrainian civilians having to take on this role, knowing they're defending their families, perform better than professional soldiers. Perform
really
better than, seriously, courage and everything.
Yeah.
I've heard US and UK veterans say that time and again. It's just they don't fucking give up, and they are prepared to die, and they learn quickly.
Can you give us an example of how their leadership style or the officer cadre based on the Soviet might be different? The Soviet model might be different than Americans.
Yeah, certainly. So the problem is this. So we look at the Russians, and the Russians have a very low bar when it comes to mission command, and we all understand that the supposed reforms of the Russian army post-Georgia never fucking occurred, right? So Anthony Drake's...